Welcome to Discover Indie Film. I'm your host, Jeff Howard, and I've got three people with me on Zoom right now, so I'm going to introduce them. This is the filmmaking team that made the film Forget Me Nots, which I'm proud to say it was at Sherman Oaks Film Festival in 2019, and it is in season 3 of the Discover Indie Film TV series. So I'm going to introduce Danice Cabanela, who wrote, produced, and is the lead actor, and Robert Santi, also wrote, produced, lead actor. And then we have the director and editor, Daniel Marcha. So thank you all three for being here.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
And, I normally ask about last names. I hope I got them all right.
Oh, yeah. At least for me.
Yeah.
Excellent. And congratulations on a wonderful film. I think I got a chance to talk to all of you at the 2019 Sherman Oaks Film Festival, which amusingly was the last film festival that was in person.
Yeah.
I have not met a filmmaker since. Actually, that's not true. We did an outdoor mixer during COVID, but love the film. And if people want to watch it, first of all, people should definitely watch it because we might have, I'd be open to spoilers if you three are. You guys tell me. But to watch the film, go to Amazon Prime Video, anywhere you can watch it. But a big chunky TV is much better than a phone if you're going to watch Prime Video. And search for Discover Indie Film and go right to Season 3, Episode 10 to watch this great film, Forget Me Nots, and it's actually followed by an equally cool and, it's such an original film. And so that's why I paired it with Allerton in the series, because I think both films are just so original and unique and kind of cover multiple genres. So imagine that there's been applause,
Thank you.
Like we had at the theater.
Thank you.
And we have Daniel on a limited amount of time. So we always start off this podcast letting people share their pasts, what led them into filmmaking. So I'll let Daniel answer first. What inspired you to become a filmmaker?
You know what? I always tell, I hope I remember the story right, because you know how you tell yourself stories of when I was a kid, and it kind of evolves over time. But I remember being 2 and being mesmerized by E.T. and just blown away by what.
No,
I know. I didn't. You know what I forgot to say is that Daniel Marcha is in a car.
I want to know the story.
I know. Gosh.
At age 2, he was inspired by E.T. Amazing. All right. Well, Danice and Rob, who wants to go while we're waiting? What got you guys, either of you, what got you into performing and then filmmaking?
Oh, wait. Are you back? Daniel.
It's like live TV, right?
It is.
There he is. Yay.
Well, but he has I see a little, there's like a red thing next to him, which
he's on mute right now.
Oh, okay. Oh, he's muted. You know what? I'll go.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
You can now.
I don't want to step on his toes, so.
Okay.
E.T. You saw. Oh.
Yeah, E.T. Can you hear me?
Yeah, maybe leave your video off. It might help to leave video off.
Yeah, I think so.
I think if I leave video off, I think I'm okay. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to go.
Excellent.
Okay. So when I was 2, I saw E.T. and I was mesmerized by it. I remember watching it over and over and over as a kid. And I quickly learned that it was a movie, that it was not real, but that there was a story that was unfolding, and I wanted to know how to do that. And so once I figured out that the idea of moving pictures was a way to tell stories, I was an only child, so I was left home a lot. My parents worked hard, so I was left home kind of by myself at times, or not by myself, but they were busy at home doing stuff around the house, and I have to entertain myself if my friends weren't available. And I remember just playing with toys, but creating scenes like I was shooting the movies in my head already and remembering that. And I remember like really creating stories that way and telling stories kind of in my head. And then as I got older into high school, and of course college, I started to like being able to understand, you know, that I needed to learn the craft of whether it be, you know, filming, editing, or whatever. I ended up going to school at Cal State Northridge here in the Valley, and continued to fall in love with film, but really fell in love with the idea of editing. And when I fully understood what an editor could do, that it was like the next final draft in the story, that next step, I love the power of what the editor can do to a film. And so I focused more on that. But I mean, it was just really falling in love with the idea of being able to tell stories and moving people so much that you could cause them to feel everything from screaming to crying to the power of being able to tell a story that way. It was something that I was instantly addicted to, whether it be consuming it as a movie lover or trying to figure out how to make it as a film.
Were you a creative kid? Like, were you writing stories and stuff as a kid too, and then saw film as another avenue for storytelling?
Yeah, I think I always loved, like I always did a lot of creative writing and gravitated towards that area. Like when it was in like English, during English class, like gravitating towards the creative writing aspects of it. But because I was also semi-raised on television too, I was very into like pop culture and knowing what was popular and knowing, you know, all the different logos and everything. It was just like, I was like kind of in entertainment too. So it was just like, I know that world so well. That's what I want to create and dive into, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And were you playing with cameras and stuff as you were younger? Because you mentioned Cal State Northridge, and I'll say, like, as someone who's a festival programmer based in LA, I think CSUN, as we call it, as the locals call it, has a vastly underrated film program. I think the films that the filmmakers and the films coming out of CSUN are always really good. In fact, not to insult the other schools in the LA area, but the fancier,
they suck.
They don't suck, but sometimes they're just showing you they're just about technical brilliance, or they're just about cinematography, or they're just about something they're showing off, or they're showing off how much money their parents gave them to make the film. Whereas the stuff out of Northridge is really, I think the professors there teach a more complete point of view.
Yeah, I think that they have to too, because it's a lot leaner than some of the other programs in the LA area. And of course I don't want to knock them, because I tried to get into some of those programs, but I was very impressed with CSUN's undergraduate film program. And I had a blast all the years that I was there. And some of my best friends and colleague filmmakers that I still make movies and projects with now, I met at that school. So it's really had a huge impact on my life, for sure.
That's excellent. And I guess we'll get Danice and Rob's stories, but when did you meet them?
So I met Rob a while. Has it been like about 10 years now, Rob?
It's been a very long time.
Yeah,
it's funny how time flies, to be honest.
My buddy Jay Diaz and I, he created a web series that went pretty viral. It's called The Flip Side. Took kind of general scenarios that happen in life and flipped them, whether it be gender roles or ages or whatever. And it was pretty popular. That got picked up by Yahoo, so we started doing a lot of work that way. And I think during that whole process of making that series, that's when I fell into Rob's world. And it was even before that, because Rob and his crew of people were making a Captain Planet trailer fan film. Is that right? That's kind of like where we met. So they were doing this whole now this is what I think we were ahead of our time, because if you watch the trailer now, you'd be like, oh, these kids are ripping off Infinity War, like, oh, they've seen the Marvel movies. But it's like, we did this, around the time that like the first Spider-Man was coming out. We haven't even entered into the world's cinematic universe yet. So it was really cool, because I think we created this like semi-colorful, semi-real world gritty kind of like, this is what would happen in real life if Captain Planet and all the crew were real people. So that was fun. And that went super viral, and it's still way out there if you search for it. It's fun to watch. But that's where I met Rob. And Rob and I had worked on a bunch of projects back and forth. We had done like little small short films. And before this, we had done a really fun horror film that was it actually was like kind of a premonition of like pre-pandemic sort of scare stuff. But we've worked together on quite a few things. And when I was brought into the mix of Forget-Me-Nots is when I first met Danice. Danice, I knew a lot of the people that you were in the circles with. We had just never really met in person until they had asked my friend Tony to direct. And I think Tony had said, well, I'll like to direct, but I want to bring Daniel in as like a co-director. And then that's when we all met at once, because I think that Rob could vouch for me, but I know that this was a project that was really close to Denise's heart. So she was a little, I wouldn't say she's standoffish, because she's a very nice person, but she was a little iffy, because I think she really was like, I need to meet Daniel and see if this kind of guy can help tell this story.
Yeah, she was protective as producer.
Very protective of it. Exactly. So that was a great way to say it. But once we did that meeting, that was when we all first kind of met, and then it was off to the races for Forget-Me-Nots. And I'm sure they can tell a little bit more about the story, but Tony ended up making a life change and moved out of state, and that's when the idea came of like, okay, it was a co-directing thing. Now what is it? And I feel like I stepped in and I helped give them the confidence of like, I know that you guys were leaning towards Tony because of his vision, but now that we don't have him, I can still bring this to the table. And I feel like I did some like rewrites of the draft and you guys really liked it, or I don't know how I won you guys over and made you think I could still do it, but maybe you guys fill it in. But I know that I had to kind of still earn that trust a little bit once Tony dropped. But then we just moved forward and from pre-production on to now, fast friends. And God, once we can get back to filming our own stuff again, like safely and where we're not being foolish, like I just can't wait to film with these guys again. So
for sure.
Yeah, excellent. I assume, the relationship must have been good creatively because these two producers also had you edit it.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, I mean the edit is almost more trust than directing. Like you can the edit is your last shot.
Yeah. I think I because I lean more towards the editing world, and that was where my emphasis was in school and all that, I tend to shoot and edit in my head. So I know that it's important to get coverage and all that, but I'm making sure that the shots I'm getting are what I know I'm going to cut. So it just felt very natural to just be like, I already see it in my head, guys. So like, let me just take a pass at it, and we move forward that way.
For sure. All right. Well, now it's time to shift gears, I think, and get the background from Danice or Rob. You two should decide who goes first.
And unfortunately, I'm the difficult director guy. Now that I got to talk about myself, I'm going to bounce. That sounds, I feel very LA, and I'm sorry if I feel like I hogged it, but I do have to leave. But,
it was appropriate to get your story while we got you, and now the producers and stars of the film are going to be able to talk without you here, which might be even more fun.
And then they can just make fun of me the entire time, and it'll be great.
And now that Daniel's gone, boy.
How terrible is he? Is he off now? Okay.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, I want to thank you so much for having us on this, and I know we had to change this date quite a bit, but thank you for being so accommodating. And I'm so proud that you made us a part of this project, because just being able to go on to Amazon Prime and watch something that we're so proud of is like, it's a really cool notch to knock off on like life achievements. So I want to thank you definitely for helping us achieve that.
Thank you. I appreciate what you just said.
All right, you guys, take it away.
Right. Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks. Drive safely.
Take care.
All right, and now you can each tell your personal stories of what led you into the arts and into filmmaking, and then when it comes to when you two met and decided to make Forget-Me-Nots, then we can dive deep into Forget-Me-Nots.
Cool.
Awesome.
Denise, you go ahead and you take it away.
So I have always engaged with television. The first thing that I remember watching in my memory was The Odyssey. I think it was on, I don't know, it was like, such an epic story, but I remember like just these fantastical, epic things happening that I was like, oh my gosh, life is so much bigger than, even as like a 4 or 5 year old, I remember thinking life is so massive. We can imagine so much. And one of my favorite actresses that I watched growing up was I Love Lucy. I love comedy. I love when people make light of situations. I love when, someone like Lucy Arnaz is told no and then does it anyway, finds a way to do whatever she wants to do. So I was always into television and inspired by the light that we can find in those stories. And I started acting in plays in 7th grade in middle school. And I loved the feelings that I loved about that came from that was I really loved how empowered I felt and how seen I felt and how allowing myself to be in other people's shoes also helped me learn about myself. So I really valued being in the space of storytelling and learning as much as I can about myself and other people. And so I did that in school. And when I was in California visiting my cousins, I would, Jeff, this is going really well. I'm like, wow, I didn't take that.
It's going great, but now you gave away see, I didn't know it wasn't California. So you visited California. So where were you living? Where'd you grow up?
Oh, I grew up in Texas.
Texas. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm from San Antonio, Texas. And, I was one of the few Filipinos in our town, and not a lot of people looked like me. And, so what I see on TV now means so much because I didn't have like someone who looked like me on television. But anyways, so going back to my visits in California, me and my cousins, who are a little bit older than me, would grab our camcorder and make these short films. And one of the films that we made was like this ninja film we made in my aunt's house. And it was a lot of like action and stunts and a terrible storyline, but we had so much fun just doing this together. So I have a lot of memories of just creating stories and being a part of something that I wanted to be a part of that I didn't see on TV. I saw the Cyclops, I saw the red-headed comedian, but I didn't see a me. So it was fun to start creating at a young age. And I ended up going to college in Minneapolis for acting and psychology with a minor in child psych. And after college, this year after, that's when I started to create my own or produce films that either friends wrote or created and be a part of storytelling in that way. So it was little by little that I chipped off how to be a part of this bigger storytelling process. So it came from, watching this stuff, watching things that I enjoyed watching, seeing those stories and being a part of plays, and then started making things with my cousins, and then going to college for, Shakespeare that I never use. And then making films a year after that, just small ones. So I've been doing a lot of things my entire life. And yeah.
I'm going to jump in. I just can't handle the coincidences here. I have a really good friend who grew up the only Filipino in his school in Dallas. And actually, I won't say his name because he's actually half his mom is white, and he will tell you to your face. He's like, "Oh, my mom is prejudiced against all non-white people. She happened to marry a Filipino guy, but she would make racist comments, and he'd go, 'Mom, we're your kids.'"
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, how can you be so pro-white person when and she's like, "Oh, you're different." Like, it was very, very weird. So I'm just going to assume that growing up in Texas, it was really hard to be in a situation where, besides no representation on TV or anything, Texas is a rough place for growing up as a minority kid. And then, of all the crazy things, like, I have a really close friend who was the only Vietnamese guy in his entire school in Minnesota. He grew up his whole life in Minneapolis.
What part of Minnesota? What part of Minnesota do you remember?
Minneapolis. His parents.
Oh yeah.
His parents came in from Vietnam, right after the war, and got jobs at 3M.
Yeah.
And I think there was just 2 Asian kids in his entire school, like, his whole way through, and he had a really hard time. He moved to San Francisco after graduation, and he's super happy now. But
good for him.
But you named the 2 places where I have a friend who dealt with what it's like to be in. LA's not perfect, but I mean, I'm born and raised here, and I've never had an all white friend group. So I don't know what it's like to be in a place like Minnesota where it really is pretty lily white.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty coincidental and magical in a way. It's like somehow we find ourselves in the same,
And I assume you had those experiences too.
Yeah. Yeah. I was always the token Asian in every theater department I was in. So it's hard not to, it is difficult to find who you are in every, realm that you put yourself in. Like, being Asian American to me in Texas meant something different to me than in Minneapolis or Minnesota, and means something different to me now. So it's to have to toggle and find your way because you are a minority and not the majority living here in the U.S. That was redundant. It can be isolating, but I think in a way I'm really grateful because it has made me fight for who I am more.
For sure. And I do remember at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival mixer, I thought I was delighted because you said to me that you were excited to watch the film Sexpert Advice that Tobit Rafael Capati made. You were like, there's another Filipino filmmaker in this festival. I was like, that felt good as a programmer to hear you be excited about that.
Yeah, I was stoked.
Right. Well, when did you move out to California?
So I moved to LA in 2012, and it has been a long journey since then. I have worked a bunch of different jobs, from being a yoga teacher to analyzing data for the Chicago Metro Transit Authority, MTA, to being a hostess at a restaurant, which is not uncommon. But, I did get hired once to tell bad premonitions at a Halloween party. So
that's an acting gig.
No, it is. Yeah. That was, it was, I've come a long way. Can we cancel?
And were you always, do you want to, I try not to back up, but so when did you start writing?
So, I started writing actually this project with Rob was my first project that I wrote. And I co-wrote it we co-wrote it together, obviously. And, it was something that came out of, first we wanted to write a comedy. We were at this party together and we were like, let's write, let's be in a film together. Let's play siblings and create something fun. And so soon after we started saying, we were like, let's make these plans. We were like, oh, you know what? Let's completely 180 and write what we know, which is a lot of darkness on my part, and see where that goes. So I, especially all the time, there's something that I handle in my personal life, which is my relationship with my brother. And I wanted to tell a story about mental health in a way. And horror is one of my favorite genres. So and Daniel loves horror as well. When we were like, let's make a film that is a psychological horror of some kind. We didn't know exactly what we were going to make, but we just laid down some plot points. And then Rob and I got together and said, okay, I'm going to write this scene. You write this scene. Here's what happens here. I'm going to write this scene. And then you write this scene. And somehow that ended up being pretty close to what we ended up with without too many rewrites. Daniel certainly helped in laying things all together. But it was pretty close to what we wrote. So that was my first hand at really putting anything down to paper or Celtics.
Very cool. And I guess I won't be the first person to point out that you said that you also got a degree in acting and psychology. You did a double major or whatever.
Major.
So psychology, that's probably why Forget-Me-Nots has such respect for someone dealing with a mental issue. Mm-hmm. Instead of just playing with it or exploiting it, I think you treat it with a much more respectful hand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess, does that bring us to, we finally get to hear Rob's story?
Yeah.
You've been really patient.
I guess so. No, well, it's funny because like all our stories are kind of intertwining now, and I don't want to like repeat because we've all kind of like, we've worked together and been in so many of the same circles for like so long that like I feel like they've already spouted, at least in the when we got to LA part of the story. So I can like LA.
But you can tell us what got you into acting.
Yeah. So it's kind of very similar to like Danice and even Daniel. Like, I mean, just as a kid, I was very much into like TV and movies, more on like superheroes and like the fantastical sides, like E.T. and the very first movie that I remember watching was Masters of the Universe. He-Man, Masters of the Universe with my dad. That was the very first movie that I remember seeing. And it's one of those things that like I grew up with the cartoons, and just seeing that like otherworldly stuff that is put on screen was just like this wow factor. Right. And then watching TV, I was very much into comedies as well. And I think what got me into acting was, remember that show In Living Color?
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So In Living Color, Jim Carrey, I just gravitated towards his larger than life presence and all his different caricatures and stuff like that. I would imitate it. And that's kind of what got me into performing. And so I started performing in 8th grade. I did a play in 8th grade. And I just wanted to go into acting, right? And even before then, I would draw. I was very much into comic books. And so before acting, it was drawing. And so creating characters in many different mediums was kind of like how I grew up. And like my parents were like, why don't you go and play sports or play baseball? We have a basketball hoop that we just put up. And I'd prefer to just be inside drawing comic books and stuff like that. And I eventually got
actually, where were you growing up?
At that point, I was in New Jersey.
Oh.
And so when I started acting, I was like, this is cool because I get to like take whatever I draw and put it into like real life. And I get to become these characters that I've like designed. Right. And, it was also my first experience of not getting the role that I wanted, which was a big bummer. I ended up getting like a secondary role, even though all my friends were like, you should have gotten this one role. And I was like, I know, but I didn't. So it was my first disappointment, but my first way of like, being able to accept that fact. And then, like growing up, you kind of get into your head that like the arts isn't lucrative. It isn't something that like culturally, it isn't something that you really can do, or, it's going to be very hard. Why don't you be a doctor? So
it's a hard one to tell your folks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Even though they knew I was like artistic, even though they knew that I loved like being on stage and stuff like that, there was always that, well, you should probably have a fallback just in case the acting doesn't pan out. Right. So that fallback got into my head, and it pretty much took me all through college. Right. So, I put acting aside, even though I took like a theater class. I graduated with a biology degree for that fallback. And I feel like, that makes me who I am. That still gives me some sort of like tool in my toolbox to like play those characters. Right. Because I know how to speak this language, right? I know how to speak this jargon. But I feel like it put me back in terms of like being comfortable in like my skin as a performer. And it sent me back like 4 years, right?
Right. Like you didn't do any plays. You didn't do any improv groups. You stayed away from acting for the 4 years and just.
I took a theater class. That was probably the only theater that I did was a class. And I was also in a fraternity. I was also like what they called a Lion Ambassador, which was like a tour guide. So I was doing a lot of extracurriculars, knowing in the back of my head that I wanted to be an actor still. So I was going to make my family happy. I was going to get my fallback degree, and which I still enjoyed. I do like science. Like I'm still a science geek at heart, I guess. But, once I got
am I wrong to assume that biology meant that medical school was always a possibility? Like
right
in the back of the parents' head, like he could still be a doctor.
No, exactly. So, right. I could always still be a doctor. And that's why I didn't do pre-med, because it was too limiting. It was either, if I was pre-med, it was going to go straight into medicine, right? At least biology, I was able to kind of broaden that, still go to med school if I wanted to, or do something else in science if acting didn't pan out. So, I graduated, but I always wanted to like start acting. So after I graduated, I got a job, but always in the back of my head, like, I was auditioning for little short films in Virginia. I was in Virginia at this time, because I moved from New Jersey to Northern Virginia. And,
okay. Yeah. Cause I was curious if you were tempted to like be driving up to New York City and for auditions and stuff.
No, by that time, after 8th grade, we moved to Virginia.
Oh, got
it. From Virginia, it was, I was still in art classes and stuff like that. And from Virginia, from freshman year of high school on was when I was, living in Virginia. And then after I graduated, I came back and got a full-time job at a medical laboratory to save up money to move out to California, which I finally did after like 3 years after I graduated. But by then I was trying to audition in short films in the DC area. I did a couple short films. A friend of mine who wanted to be a director, he's like, I'm in a directing class. I need to make a short film. I was like, yes, let's do it. Anytime I could be in front of the camera, like I had a musician friend that wanted to film a music video, and I did like a cameo there. And then I did this one kind of Jason Bourne-ish type of short film that my friend was doing. It was no dialogue. It was just all like cinematic and whatever. And we did it in DC. And that was like, for a while, that was part of my reel, even in LA, because I didn't really have anything to show. And by about 3 years into working my full-time job in the labs, I was like, I have to get out of here, because it was really weighing on my mental health. Like going back to this whole like mental health topic that we decided to like write Forget-Me-Nots on, it was weighing on my mental health, because I knew that I was like meant for more things and something bigger than sitting at a microscope, you know?
Yeah. I mean, so the fire, the burning fire to act and perform, like it never left you. It was there the entire time.
Yeah. And as much as I wanted to like stamp it, I didn't want to stamp it out, but as much as like I tried to stamp it out to make sure that like, I got my degree as its fallback and stuff like that, it was always in the back of my head. And it wasn't until like 2008 when I decided I need to move out and go to California and pursue this dream and see where it can take me, because I can't be here anymore. You know,
right. So you make it out to LA, you make it happen, which honestly, that's congrats to you. I mean, that's a big deal I think to make that move is not easy.
Yeah. Thank you. And I mean, it definitely helped, because like my wife, who was then my girlfriend, she's a Cali girl, right? So she moved to Virginia, and that's where we met. But then she's always been wanting to like go back to California. And once I was like, I got enough money, like, let's go. Her support was just like that made it all the better for me to like get out here, because I think I might have had two friends that had already moved out here. One actually is a writer in the industry, and we went to elementary school together. And so I had maybe like a couple of friends here, but she like knew the area, right? And she was just helped the support and the move to Los Angeles. And yeah, and it was just awesome to finally be here and get to like try my hand in this and actually be like in the areas where these things are made, right? Because DC, there's stuff, but it's not like really much, right? So this one, it's just like you're just inundated with so much like creativity that it's just inspiring,
Yeah. So did you hit the ground running? Was it just like, okay, I'm here now, start looking up, open auditions and jumping into classes and all that?
I did, yeah. I hit the ground running as fast as I could. I found acting classes, and I got into a scene study class that just like I started at the foundation class and then moved to the advanced and master classes over the years. And it was great. But then I also started to also experience the hardships of, I guess, like being Asian American, being mixed Filipino, being who I am in an industry that's predominantly like white, predominantly black, like the stereotypes that we fall into, that makes it difficult to even branch out and get the opportunities that you really feel that you can thrive in. but
yeah. Well, and neither of you have mentioned it, but I'll go ahead and say, as a white male aware of a lot of people in the industry, is Filipino is harder too, because the white people who don't have multicultural friends see Asians, and when they're making film, and you can tell me, no, you're totally wrong, but I think it's
know
pretty
where you're
obvious.
going with this.
Yeah, you know exactly where we're going.
Yes.
They just see this Chinese, Japanese.
Yeah, East Asian.
Yeah.
And they would probably prejudice a-holes. I had a really good friend who was Indian and auditioning, and basically everyone said, well, can we just cast you as Mexican? Because
Right.
he didn't fit part of Asia that wasn't Chinese, Japanese is suddenly,
And that's where we kind of fall into this box of like, you're not enough one way or the other.
Of anything.
Of anything, right?
Yeah.
It's like, can we just be people? Can we just be someone? Like, why does a role have to be a specific ethnicity when it's clearly not written as a specific ethnicity? Like, but
not written at all, right?
Yeah, certain people have like a notion in their head that like, oh yeah, of course this guy is supposed to be Asian. He's a doctor, right? Like, but so I had those problems that like in the beginning it was so difficult for me to get auditions. Like I had agents and stuff like that. And I don't know how well they were doing at trying to get me auditions, how much work they were putting in to try and get me auditions, but I know I wasn't like getting those auditions. And then the auditions
Rob,
I would get,
were you ever going back like 9-8 years ago, were your agents sending you out for Spanish speaking roles too?
No, but I was going out for Latino roles. So I was going out for like Asian roles, and I was going out for Latino roles, and I was neither of each. Like they were like either specifically like Chinese or Japanese, or I was going out for Latino roles. And I was like, okay, well, I am who I am. I can't change my face. So I'm going to go there and be the person that I am. And I'm going to take my artistic liberties from these sides and present to you what I interpret in this role. Right. So I would I would be in the waiting room with like actual Asian people, and I'm like, I'm not that Asian, and then
it's a weird feeling.
And then I'm like, I'm not that Latino, so it was really something that I had to really accept and be strong enough with myself to be like, I am who I am. And it's not easy sometimes when you're just like, well, you're looking for this specific one, but I know I can still do it. But if you're willing to set aside your stereotypes, then maybe you'd give me the role. But
and it's insanely. I shouldn't have been surprised, but I think it was after the 2010 census. After some census, I learned the fact that in California, obviously, number one language is English, and number two is Spanish, but then number three is Tagalog.
Tagalog.
Like Filipino Americans, that's the third most spoken language in the biggest state in the country.
Yeah,
and yet there's zero representation and zero acknowledgement that this community exists.
And there are so many of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's now that we're starting to finally come out of the woodwork and get our time in the spotlight, but it's still difficult. At least in my experience, Danice, you can probably say
it is
different, but
no, it is. Jeff, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I think we're just so we're just so used to it that we're like, yeah, that's what it is. But
what's the water, right? You're fish in the water. And it's like, hey, water's nice today. And it's like, what's water? Like that.
Yeah. It's, I feel like it still is hard, for me also, Rob. I think also being Filipino / Asian male versus being those things, but female, there are like different, even different things with that.
Yeah.
With, you know, the like the fetishization. Yeah, thank you.
They fetishize Asian women.
With the women, and then the emasculation of men. Yeah. And it's, so there are different things there already, but I've always felt the same way too with that, you know, I'm being not, you know, total East Asian looking. I just wasn't enough of that. It was actually it was easier for me to get roles that were looking for completely open ethnicity, completely either male or female.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't normally book we're looking for an Asian role, or, you know, like for most of the years that I've lived here and auditioned, no one was writing Filipino roles until like this past year.
Yeah, exactly.
So so was that a primary reason to write Forget-Me-Nots?
Yeah. You know, I think we really were just coming from a place of like, let's have fun doing something together. And it was just, you know, like when you see another Filipino at a party, you're like,
I gravitate to that.
Was that when you met? Actually, I don't think we covered when you two met.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we just like, we ran in the same circles and we met through a mutual friend. I think it was at a bar when we actually like met each other, right?
Probably.
Yeah. And then I think it was literally that conversation of like, this is my friend Danice, this is my friend Rob. And we're like, you're Filipino?
Yeah.
I'm like, yes.
It's like ding, ding, ding. Oh yeah.
And then so like when you meet someone like of your same culture, you're like, you kind of can't help but like gravitate to them and try and like find even more common ground, right? So we already knew that we were Filipinos, so we love Filipino food. And so we can talk about that for hours. And then, you know, we're both actors. So. Which
there weren't, Rob, when you were living in Virginia, were there a lot of other like Filipino actors that you ran with?
No. You know, in Virginia, like I was probably like one of a handful of like Asian people. And there was like some Latin people that I remember thinking, I'm like, maybe they're Filipino instead, you know, like, because I just like wanted to like meet another Filipino except for like my relatives. And I was like, oh, they might be Filipino, but I never actually like asked them. I just kind of assumed in my head that maybe they're Filipino and they're part like me.
Yeah. But
yeah, no, to answer your question, there was no like other Asian actor, at that point. And, moving out to LA was definitely like, it's much more of a melting pot, which was nice. Right.
It is a melting pot, but the industry hasn't not run by a melting pot.
No, exactly. No. And that's why it was difficult. You know, it was difficult for me, like starting out, with like not being able to audition and stuff like that. And I'm not really knocking my agents, you know, or I was actually like a little overwhelmed and, you know, not seeing the representation that of myself, that I kind of was like, well, maybe it's not my time. And it was not a very good thing for me to like think, but I was like, maybe it's not my time. I'm just going to be patient and not be as proactive. But then, you know, like meeting a lot of my friends that were like, you know, we're actors. If we're not getting opportunities, we got to make our own opportunities. Right. And so that's what kind of got me into the filmmaking process, because I've always been an actor, but I'm like, if I'm not getting auditions, I'm just working here at Starbucks, and I didn't move out to California to work at Starbucks. Right. Or to be a waiter. And, I just needed something else because, again, back to my mental health, I needed to fill that creative side. Right. And so that's where Daniel mentioned, that's where, friends of mine and I decided to make the Captain Planet trailer, which is supposed to be off of the 90s cartoon that we made into like a Dark Knight type of trailer. So we made it a gritty live action. What would happen if these 5 kids grew up 10 years later and the world is different. And it's, so we created this trailer, and that's how Daniel and I started working together, albeit the flip side as well. But that was like my first experience in the producing side and the writing side. I didn't even write that script, but producing mostly. And then when Danice and I met, we were starting to talk more, and we were like, we need to be, if we want more representation of ourselves, we need to create,
ourselves. We need to do it ourselves. Yeah. We can't wait for it.
So as much as, waiting, there's only so much waiting we can do, that we got to create an opportunity for ourselves. So we were able to like decide again, we were trying to create a comedy. And then I think after our first brainstorm meeting, we started talking about mental health, and we started talking about horror, and, like we both love horror, and we were like, why don't we just make a suspense horror? And it just kind of like, it just all evolved with that. And maybe we'll make a comedy one of these days, but for some reason the comedy just like it got cut. And then we got on this rant about like mental health and horror and suspense. And we're like, we just started taking these ideas, and, like Danice said, we were just like, all right, you write this scene, you write the opening scene, and then I'll write the end scene, and let's see how we can get to the,
which is a fun exercise.
Yeah.
I was going to, did you said you want to write content. Did you actually start writing some, like, did you throw out funny ideas and then just turned away from them?
I don't think we barely structured the bones.
Yeah.
It's like a miracle that we got.
Yeah. That was honestly, forget-me-nots from from the first scene. It's pretty dead serious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's, yeah. So,
that's kind of how it came to fruition. And then we were just like, we got on this roll of like, this was really, really good. Right. We just loved where the story was going. We loved the message that it was what we were trying to tell, because mental health is so important. And it should be in the forefront of everyone's thoughts, right? Because you have physical health, but there's mental health is just as important, And when Danice said that,
and Danice's character has, besides mental health, very clear PTSD,
trauma, a lot of.
And so
trauma.
when she brought the idea of like a story that was clearly close to her heart, that she like it meant a lot for her to tell, like I couldn't help but just veer off into that story. And I always wanted to make sure that I was respectful of like her past experiences with it, and just taking the story where she felt it was like most comfortable for her to tell. You know what I mean? And then I think that's why it came together so well, and the product was so meaningful, is because, there was always care in every aspect of telling that story, even like past us. It was even when we brought Daniel on, when he was, when we brought Tony on, like I went to bat for them because I had worked with them many times over, and I knew that they can bring what this project needed. And, luckily we ended up being able to like bring Daniel to take the reins, because initially they were co-directors, like he said. But when Tony left, this was going to be Daniel's first solo directorial project. And so, I'm sure he was just as excited to be a part of it as we were to have him, knowing that his love for horror and his vision of what he like interpreted from this script just kind of like meshed really well. And he took great care in making sure that this story was told right.
He did, yeah.
And he was always so respectful about if he suggested making changes. I think that's where we all kind of like, we knew that we wanted to take care with the story, that whenever we would bring up a potential change, if something wasn't working, we were always like kind of talking with each other and making sure that, is this something that we could all agree on? Is this something that would be true to the story that Danice like held so dear to her, and then
I guess I should say, I should say why this is important. like this.
I don't want to say that. I want to let you say it.
I'm like, thank you. Now that my brain has floated back down. Okay. So this Forget Me Nots is inspired by my brother's mental health situation. He's not diagnosed with anything, but he definitely has a lot of symptoms of various conditions. And I, at the time, was really struggling to find a way to have conversations with my parents that I felt were successful in how to deal with his mental health. And so with that energy that I had at the time, I didn't know what to do with it. And so when Rob and I would get together, I would just definitely talk about my personal life and be like, oh, this is happening in my personal life. This is going on with my brother. I could write a lot about that. And it's a horrifying reality to feel like, you want to help somebody, but you don't know how. And you don't know how to get them to want to help themselves, or get your parents to be open about communicating this thing that is still so taboo, especially in our culture, and a lot of minority cultures. So, this is inspired by my brother and my relationship with my brother. And there are a couple of things that happened in the film that are like real in my life. Like that crying scene with Leo in the room and just having like a meltdown. That's happened before. Not that he was necessarily seeing things in that moment, but he has in previous moments, or felt things. And to bring those to life was really surreal and hard as not just a filmmaker, but a human, to see back, to see the reflection of what I had been going through. So it's all been a really like a big, not Band-Aid, but like, there's a quote that's like, artists are you're always exposing your wounds. You're always exposing yourself and being vulnerable. So this film definitely brought that to a higher reality for me.
There was some catharsis for you?
Yes. Yeah. In a way. Even when my mom actually saw the film, I didn't know what she was going to say to me. It was like, I don't know. Will she know that this is really about my brother? It's pretty obvious. She actually texted me and was like, I saw Forget Me Nots. It was so good. I'm so proud of you. The thing that I remember the most was, I'm so proud of you. We've never actually talked about it after that text, but I'm like, I don't need to know. I'm like, that's all I wanted to know. And I just sobbed after that, because whether or not she really understood whether or not she understood, the film, it meant a lot to me that she saw me as an artist wanting to communicate. Oh, look, it's Leo on the screen. The cat that's in the movie. I realize we're not on video. And in a way communicate to me that this is hard. We're in a hard position. This is me just like imagining what my mom is thinking, but it meant a lot to know that she supported the film. Yeah,
and it's because of the personal nature, I mean, so as a viewer, so watching it multiple times as I have, like the moments you're talking about where Leo does display, let's call it a lack of stability or whatever. Mm-hmm. Of course, within the context of the film, I see it as what's going on in her mind that she's projecting onto it, right? Mm-hmm. But for you and your mother, you get a very personal view where, listening to you makes me think that the character is actually remembering some issues that her brother, we're doing spoilers, right?
Yeah.
Feel free.
I think we agreed to spoil it. But her brother's gone and, watching it, why is that character behaving that way? Mm-hmm. Of course, as I goofed up at the film festival, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's a ghost story.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Jeff, that just hit me. So last week I had a moment of grief of feeling like I've lost the brother that I once knew. So in a way, like he is like a ghost in that way. So to hear that again, I'm like, yep, it is. It's a ghost. It is a ghost story. Oh gosh. My bad.
No worries. We're, everything goes now. I hear that on podcasts all the time.
Yeah, it's crazy because everything is so intertwined. Like all our devices are connected that you're like, where is this even coming from? Like my
Do Not Disturb is on, right?
Well, the funny thing is, Do Not Disturb. I like Do Not Disturb goes on automatically, but if someone's in your favorites, they break through. Yeah. And hey, guess whose 81-year-old mother calls 7 times a day and is on the Do Not Disturb? She's allowed to get through, so it doesn't really help.
Yeah, but we have so many devices these days that like sometimes I know I forget that. Oh, I didn't turn my notifications off on my computer. Everything else is off, but then I'm on a Zoom call, and next thing I know, there's a FaceTime call that pops up.
Right, yeah. 2 video chats at once. You could just do 2 interviews at once to be more efficient.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so Forget-Me-Nots, we'll jump back into the filmmaking of it. So it sounded like the writing process was really creative and original and rewarding for you both.
Correct.
And you tied it together.
And it was it was also my first time really writing something from start to finish.
Yeah. Although I was going to point out when you were sharing your story that you shared that you did a lot of drawing and sort of comic book inspired stuff as a kid, which is legitimate writing, right? But not screenwriting.
Correct.
Although it's storyboarding, right?
It was, I guess in
Literally.
a way. It's always been in the back of my head because I still love to draw. And I was like, man, if this doesn't work out, then I can maybe go into storyboarding because it's definitely the same panels and you're doing the same thing, but you're doing it for us like a screenplay instead of like a comic book. But
yeah. So what did it take for you to, after you wrote this script, to just absolutely make it happen? Or were you determined to make it happen even as you began?
I think we were. Oh, Danice, you are muted by the way. No, I think in the process of us writing it, we knew that we wanted to make it happen because this wasn't like a writing exercise for us. This is something that we wanted to act in because, at least for me, I'm first and foremost an actor, right? I wanted to do this because I wanted to be able to act in something. And, and I feel like Danice was, I would let her answer that, but I feel like she felt the same way because she's also an actress. And we were like, let's do this. So I think in the back of our heads, as we were writing this thing, we wanted to make it. We wanted to actually make it. And I think it wasn't until we got the directing team involved that we were like, how are we going to get this made? Do we have money to put in? I didn't have expendable cash to put in. So we just decided, okay, how much is it going to cost and how are we going to get the money? And it was after we got the directing team. Danice, isn't that right? Like, it was after we got the directing team involved that we decided, okay, this has to have a budget. Because of the scope of what we wanted to do. I mean, Daniel and Tony, they're great with working on zero budget. And like, that's why I love working with them, because they literally just have a camera and they can work with light as best as they can and they'll make something, you know. But I think the way we wanted to have this thing shot and presented to the world, it needed to have some sort of budget. So then we did, wasn't a Kickstarter. It was we did a Seed and Spark.
Yeah. So part of the reason to raise money too was not just out of necessity, but also because we were like, you know what, we're gonna do it proudly. We're gonna raise money proudly because artists should get, or like people who make films should get paid, and also these are Filipino filmmakers making a film, and that was important to us also.
Yeah, so the budget was not just like, it was all encompassing, right? It was like, we're going to do it right. We're going to hire people and not just ask for favors, because we knew that we valued everyone's time. And if they're going to come aboard, we needed to make sure that they were compensated for their time and efforts. Because, if you ask for favors, usually those times is like, yeah, I'll do you a favor, but for the paying gigs that those other people have to do, this project kind of goes on the wayside. So we knew that if we took as much care with this project as we were planning, that we didn't want to have to wait for someone to come back and do the sound for it because they were working on a job that was actually paying them,
Absolutely. Yeah. That's especially post sound. If post sound is a favor, you could be a year.
Yeah, exactly. I think that even came about, right, with our sound person, it was not the sound mixer, but it was like the sound design. We were like, we have to pay him because it's this film rests a lot on the sound design.
Yeah.
So we couldn't wait for a year for him to finish his other stuff. We were like, well, we're paying you, so we need you to actually like have a turnaround for this thing. Mm-hmm. So when we took all that into account when we were making our budget, and we did our Seed and Spark campaign, and then, we're able to raise that money.
Thank God.
Yeah.
And more.
Yeah.
And then still fell short of what we thought.
Right. Because there was all, as what we learned, there's always like snafus that happen on set, and there's expenses that you end up incurring out of nowhere. Our
location was in Hollywood. And, those of us who live in Hollywood know that there could be like, Hollywood can be rough. And our location's parking was like next to these like dilapidated buildings. And it was just like a not great little pocket. But
it was still gated, by the way.
Huh?
It was still gated.
It was gated. Yeah, it was gated. We parked our grip truck in that parking lot, not very big also. And sometime overnight, someone stole the car battery. They stole the truck battery out of our vehicle, tried to break in. Thank God they did not. Thank God they didn't actually successfully break in.
Right. So the back of the truck with all the expensive gear in it was more secure than the hood.
Actual battery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, because the battery, we didn't know this. We thought like, hey, that means they had to get into the hood of the car to get the battery, because that's where we think the batteries are supposed to be. But it turns out the battery is actually like cradled underneath the cabin of the truck.
Yeah, very poor design.
So all you have to do is literally, screw the battery out. And I mean, it was not a cheap battery. And I forget how we realized that the battery was missing, or we were...
I think we were like, oh, it died. Somehow it died. And then we were just, the crew was like, how we found out was that we wanted to move the back of the truck up so that the crew didn't have as far to walk. And so we turned on the car. It wasn't starting. We're like, oh my God, what happened? And just the battery died. Then we went to go check on the battery. It was just gone.
Yeah.
So
Because we called the people that we rented the truck from, and we said, the car's not starting. We needed someone to go and check it out. And they were like, check the battery and see, and then we looked where the battery is. We were like, it's not there. They're like, why, what are you talking about? The battery's not there. And we're like, well, we are where you're talking. I think we had to FaceTime. And he's like, okay, show us where this battery is. And then we found the little cradle and he's like, that's where the battery is supposed to be. And I was like, there's no battery there.
And I can't help but say that is the perfect crash course in film, being a film producer, is that you are going to have to put out fires and solve problems that you could have spent a year planning for every contingency, and you would have never thought, well, we're going to have a battery stolen from the truck. I mean,
never in a million years were we thinking that battery was going to,
even though it was behind a fence, right? Yeah, like
it was unlocked.
And I guess now you know why retired cops are like, buy every grip truck 24/7. But
for real.
Yeah,
for real.
But it was a really great learning experience, to say the least, though.
But on the shoot, did you guys get to focus on your acting?
Or
was it?
This was definitely the project where I was like, I wore too many hats that day, because I was acting in the film, producing. I drove the grip truck. It was like there was a lot going on, and especially after the battery thing had occurred, but some other logistical stuff needed to be taken care of. We were still, the primary producers. So there's no one for us to turn to on the day of to be like, I'm not going to take care of this. You're going to take care of this today. So
that's what we wanted to do. But
we wanted to be able to focus more on the acting. But it's something that I learned for next time and all the other times after that. It was a great learning experience for us to, do this crash course, learn how to figure out how to keep the show rolling. And I came out on the other side feeling more excited about how I could do things better the next time.
Yeah. You got it done, and you got it done well. And the performances don't look hampered by the burdens of producer.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And I was going to ask, actually, I forgot my own question, which was on the writing, when you're going to play the parts, I find it so commendable in a way that the way you chose to challenge yourselves as actors. I mean, Danice gives her, I assume you wrote for yourselves and each other, but, Robert had this challenge of I would think it was really challenging to play that role just right. Yeah. And Danice is like, playing a character who's on the verge of a nervous breakdown in a way. And
we didn't make things easy for us
in a lot of ways. Yeah. And in a lot of ways, you both, sometimes actors write what I might refer to as a vanity project, where they want to just put themselves like in the best light possible, shine the light on me and see, this is, and, if anything, like you had an instinct to challenge yourselves and really push it and really not even, the audience has to actually get it.
Yeah. I think at least I'll speak for myself, but when we first approached this project, we wanted to write for ourselves. I wanted to write for myself. And then once I found what the project was for me, the story became more important than showcasing my talent for it. So that I realized, after everything was said and done, that's what it was for me, and not me being like, look at me, I can sing, I can dance, I could I could do it all. It was definitely not that.
I think that's what the comedy would have been. I think that would have been more of a vanity project.
Yeah. Next project. Yeah.
Next project.
We really
Next
did.
one, you'll do
every way to
everything.
make it work.
Well, I'll say, and you mentioned, and when you were talking about your history and auditioning and the kind of roles for, applause from the bleachers that there's no fetishization and there's no. I mean, I actually really enjoyed seeing the foods in the kitchen that were Filipino, but it wasn't. But it doesn't. It's not like there's nothing stereotypical about the way you present your characters.
Yeah, we didn't want to make it so heavy-handed. Like, being Filipino was who we are. In the story, that's who we are, and it wasn't like it was those little tidbits of visuals that we want to just put in there and not make it so like, hey, we're Filipinos, look at us.
Yeah. It's just this is a story with humans in it, and hey, look, the home, it's a Filipino home, and that's all you had to do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so like the I forget, I don't even know what it's called, but the death card that kind of shows that Leo is actually dead. Though that's kind of like a Filipino in nature.
Yeah.
When someone passes their name and their
it's like a memorial kind of.
The memorial is the word I was looking for. Yeah. So we wanted to keep it as not in your face as possible because we just wanted to show us as human beings or cats as
which is a great shot. We don't have Daniel with us, but how was it? How was the cat performance? Like the cat performance is pretty flawless in a way. Like,
she was perfect.
Rob jumps and she lands.
It took us a little bit to get her to land, right, Denise? Because she's so good at just staying there. Like she's like such a well-behaved cat that you kind of put her in place and she kind of just sits there and like looks at you. getting her to move and land.
She was like, "Oh, I have to get off camera now."
Yeah.
She did some good acting at the end too, right? She did some killer cat acting when you're kind of over her shoulder and she's watching you spin. And for a cat to just chill and watch you spin, that's that's pretty demanding.
It is. Yeah, she was actually in it. It didn't take too long, actually. It didn't. It didn't take as long as I thought it would. I was a very proud fur mama.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wish we had other fun stories to tell about that cat shot. But she was really great.
You did a good job. Excellent.
I think the biggest, I wouldn't even call it a problem, but I think the biggest issue we had was to get her to land in a specific spot.
Yeah, where the camera was pointed.
Where the camera was, and we needed her paws to kind of like, hit a certain mark and then kind of walk off. But it was a tight shot, and that was probably the most difficulty we had. But other than that, you tell her to stay, and she's there.
But that would have happened if you were trying to jump off the table and land on the right spot, right? Like you don't always land right.
I had to jump off the table.
You did, but we didn't see your landing.
But did you land in the right spot?
No, I landed on a little wrestling pad or something like that. I will tell you, I thought it was going to be easier than it was, because when you're up on the table and you have to like jump off the table like a cat. I just was thinking to myself, I'm perched on the corner of the table and thinking to myself, I could just break my neck.
Especially because an actor, you're doing a cat jump.
Yeah.
And we can't do that.
My shoulders could give out and I could land straight on my face.
I'm surprised you didn't have like 3 mattresses stacked up.
I think we had maybe one. We only could afford one mattress. Okay.
One little stunt pad.
One little stunt mat. I don't
I
even
love
know.
that if there's anyone listening, like any human that's like, I didn't see the film. What are they talking about?
Yeah, this should really make them want to watch it, right? Because,
They're like, cat, jump.
and I promise you should watch it. Everyone should watch it twice, because you'll watch it the first time and then you figure a lot out, and then you watch it a second time, and then it's just like Fight Club. It's like Fight Club for cats.
Wow, that is a huge, and like that's a great way to promote.
But it's a film that when you know the secret of the film film is more rewarding to view than less. I mean, that's a cool story. All right, so you make it through post, and you paid people so that you could get her done, and then hit the festival circuit.
Then we hit the festival circuit, and Sherman Oaks was awesome. It will always have the Sherman Oaks Film Festival will always have a special place in our heart. And after that, we didn't actually have a super long run at the festivals, because it got to a point where, for me personally, from a personal standpoint, I was like, oh, it's so hard to talk about this right now. It's so hard to talk about it. That I was like, I think I'm going to halt on submitting it. So, like we've been talking about the whole time, it's been such a personal journey for me, and, exposing the wounds. So I felt less inclined to talk about it over and over again. This is the first time actually in a long time that we've been all together to talk about the film. Huh, Rob?
Yeah.
So
and then oddly, I mean, COVID hit about 4 months after Sherman Oaks.
Yeah.
4 or 5 months. So
yeah. So we did do a little bit, like a bit of online. Actually, a lot of it was online. Which was a whole weird, bizarre thing. Some people did it really, really well though. But yeah, we had a great, nice run during the 2020 madness. And now we're looking forward to the next things we're going to do. Yeah.
Anything, during lockdown? Was there anything, have you started writing again? What's been the focus?
Not together. I've been I think we've both been busy with a lot of other acting projects, and acting. Rob was on set today for a commercial also.
No. I was previously on set for like 3 weeks on a project a couple weeks ago, and what's it called? And that was a really great experience, I'll tell you. But it wasn't until recently that I was able to start like acting again post. I wouldn't even say post pandemic, but like in the later parts of the pandemic. For me, probably all of 2020 was pretty much nothing for me. Like no auditions, and we were all going through so much already that it was just trying to like get through that year, Yeah.
It's so crazy to me, Rob, because the last like 3 month feel like the last year. Like it's like my brain wiped out the last year, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, no, yeah, you have been working a lot, and it's recent for you. Yeah. So he worked on that 3-week project, and then he also booked a commercial. I was celebrating that just a bit ago.
Thank you. Yeah.
So to circle back to your question, we haven't been writing anything together. Been working on our own projects, our own bookings and stuff like that.
Cool. Well, you've made a verbal commitment to write that comedy someday. It's been recorded. And I'll add that, it was a weird time because we are discussing Forget-Me-Nots being part of the Discovery Indie Film TV series, but season 3 came out September 2020.
Yeah.
And then I got buried by the virtual Sherman Oaks of 2020.
Wow.
And then are my timings right? No, it was the year before, wasn't it?
No, I think
season 3 was like April of 2020.
April sounds right. Yeah, April.
It was April 2020. That's right. So it came out in April, and then I actually had one of those years that simply shouldn't exist. And I just actually didn't do this podcast for like a full calendar year. Like the reason I didn't ask you to do this interview when season 3 came out is I was too busy going to funerals.
Oh man.
And I just couldn't, I didn't have the emotional bandwidth actually to, I don't know why I guess the podcast was the first thing to drop because it had to keep the festivals going. But, but I was like, you know, it's funny. It's funny what happens to us as humans, but I just couldn't have conversations with people like this because I was just going to talk about them funerals. I couldn't ask you about your film because I wanted to talk about loss. Of course, your film's about loss too, which is
but sometimes
I still would have dominated it. Trust me. It would have been horrible if we talked then. So it's kind of nice that we're talking a year and a half later.
Yeah.
Madness. My apologies for making you wait so long.
So crazy how time has just flown by because, like you said, the last year just almost didn't exist.
Yeah. And actually, when I think about it, it was April 2020, which means we put that season together before COVID really hit because it always takes a little while to get everything uploaded to Amazon and everything cleared through them and all that. So fascinating. And now we finally got to discuss it. And anything else anyone want to throw in before we can wrap it up and then do another quick episode of your favorite films when you answer the 4 questions?
Ooh-hoo-hoo. Thank you for everything that you do, Jeff. It's really awesome. I love what you do with Discover Indie Film and, you know, the films that you brought to Sherman Oaks. And I loved every filmmaker that I met at that mixer. So it's great to be a part of the community that you create.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you both. I have to say, it keeps amazing me that everybody's nice. I'm still the only assholes that have ever come into the film festival is when like a board member had us add a film as a favor. And maybe that person knew it was a favor. So they're like, you didn't like my film. And so they're a dick, but everyone else is nice. I don't honestly like not.
No, I want to know who that is.
It was years before. After our second year, I'm like, no more favors. Like we just,
that's funny.
I'm not going to do favors for people. And they show up at the White Fire Theater and they're like, I brought a DCP drive with me. And it's like, how many emails did we send out saying, saying that this theater doesn't have DCP, but whatever. Silliness.
I really appreciate how you took and how you still take like great pride in promoting, you know, indie filmmakers and the type of content that you put into these festivals. Just to piggyback on, you know, Danice and thanking you and you know, promoting us in this.
Thank you. I mean, you know,
in all these different aspects too, not just like the festival, but you know, through Discover Indie Film on Amazon, and then through the podcast. It's just you're there to like help us tell our stories, and not just like showing the story that we're telling, but the story behind the story. You know. Yeah.
Look, my hope is I've been. I'm a whole lot older than I look, and I've been around a long time, and I have no idea. I wish everyone would make it big, but I love the idea that we're capturing this moment when people are at the festival circuit, and then, you know, who knows who's going to be massive in the year 2030, you know, and have a hit show on a streaming network yet to be created, you know, and then people will be like, you know what? You can go listen to that person talking to this film festival dude and hear what was going on with them when they made their first film that they co-wrote with a friend and fellow actor.
It'll always be special. I know.
It's a cool time to capture, I think, and you know, it was just organic. We started this festival because we care about indie film and indie filmmakers, and then I was like, you don't get to hear anything at the Q&A because, like, you know, I start off with 2-3 questions, then we open it up to the crowd. And I'm like, you know, I have this podcast microphone because a friend made me buy it for a silly reason a long time ago. And I was like, oh, just do a podcast. And then during the podcast, it was just all the people who made features would say, I'm going to be on Amazon. I'm going to be on iTunes. I made it onto Hulu or Netflix. And everyone who made a short was like, you know, put it on YouTube and you can link to it from my website. And I was like, there's got to be a way to get. So that's how the idea was born, to take all the shorts of people doing the podcast and put them in a TV series.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And the neat thing is, and then Amazon has now banned shorts.
What?
Yeah.
They don't take shorts anymore. And a filmmaker who's in season 4 was like, will they still take Discovery into film? And I was like, yeah, because it's a TV series. It's not. They don't see it as
brilliant.
Shorts. And who knew?
Really?
Who knew that would happen?
Brilliant, Jeff.
Okay, so that was lucky.
I do have a couple things to promote.
Oh, good.
I have.
Thank you. I was going to say, I didn't know if you were able to. And I was like, Denise is working on.
I know, but I feel like my brain has been such a mess during this entire interview, and I apologize. And I'm like, I'm such a ding dong right now. But I had my first ever co-star on Dear White People that just dropped September 22nd, season 4, episode 1. And then I also have a Netflix show that I play a lead animated character on Netflix called Adventure Beats, dropping October 22nd. So that's coming up. I'm excited and anxious and all the big feelings.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I love Dear White People.
Yay. I do too.
I started it by myself, actually, when I was home alone after surgery, and I thought it was so brilliant. I was like, well, I gotta wait till my partner's home and watch it with her. And, so I haven't finished it yet because there's always something else she wants to watch. But now I really got to push to watch the rest of Dear White People, because that's a really good, innovative show.
It is. It's so great. It was one of the vision board shows, that I was like, I want to work on this show. And so it was such a dream, and I feel really grateful and blessed to be a part of it, because I just respect those filmmakers and casting and everyone involved so much.
And Robert, you want to say what the 3-week gig was, or?
I don't know if I can yet, so
Fair
not
enough.
Exactly. But I will say that it was a really amazing experience, and it couldn't have come at a much needed time. With like just finally auditioning on a regular basis, and like, the frustrations of trying to make it in this business, right? And it just came at a perfect time. And the experience I had on set with everyone, and going to work every day, like actually, like when you go to your day job and it's like an everyday kind of thing. This one was like the job that I wanted and the job that I've been here to pursuing. And it was going to set every day. And it was like a dream come true. And everyone there from day one was just so welcoming, and you see everyone, every day, and you become a family, like a very quick family. And I just had come into there, like they had all been working together on in the past days, but then I came in for that 3-week stint, and I just got really close with everyone on set, right? Not just like the actors, but the entire crew. Everyone was so welcoming, and, know everyone by name. And it was just really cool to be a part of that. And it really was a dream come true. And then, coming off of that, I book a commercial, and it was another one of those things I'm like, wow, this is actually happening for me. And it's all happening like one right after the other. So I'm just kind of like riding high on this train, and, just excited for more things to come, because I'm finally doing what I moved out here for, and things are finally starting to happen. right?
Wonderful.
That's
Wonderful.
how I feel too. I feel the same way, Rob.
Yeah. But I think everything leading up to it just gives me just a respect for the process and the hardships and just learning what I can take, because it's not an easy business to get into. And no matter how many people have told me, like, even starting out down the line, like, this is not an easy business to get into. You're going to have a lot of failures and it's not until you actually start to experience that you really feel like, oh yeah, this is not something, this is why not everyone can do it, because not everyone can put themselves out there day in and day out for like nothing to happen,
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
No, it takes so much fortitude, and this last 18 months, I mean, I have a list in my mind of people I know personally who COVID was their chance to move back home from LA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They said this whole town shut down. Can't even do a side gig.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The restaurant and bar and, the gyms, everything closed, and people are like, you know what? I've had enough. So the fact that you're both here and you're working post-COVID or post-vaccine release, I think the vaccine is what really allowed things to,
yeah.
That's what made 2021 not a piece of shit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We made it. We're making it through.
We made it. I went to a concert. Unbelievable.
Who did you see?
Oh, we had bought tickets in 2019 for that Hella Mega tour. So it was Weezer, Green Day, and Fall Out Boy.
Fall Out Boy.
They were good. They were really, really good.
I bet. Oh, man.
I'm a huge Weezer fan. She's a huge Green Day fan. And so we were like, let's go to a concert at Dodger Stadium. And then it was supposed to be July 2020.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my gosh.
It got delayed to July. And then I think it finally, I don't remember. I think it was August. It was August. But
Did they meet your expectations, all of them?
Oh, they all. I mean, this really doesn't belong in your podcast interview, but
I want to know.
it was so special because these three bands, like they'd all, Weezer came from LA. They were like a little band in LA. So they were like, we're home. And Green Day, they're California based. They're from the Bay Area. And they came down here a lot and played the Sunset Strip when they were trying to make it. And they were all like, they were so delighted to be playing for 50,000 people at Dodger Stadium. They all wore like Dodger jackets.
That's
and
adorable.
Stuff. And like they were just, they had so much fun. And because we're old and in our 50s, I was like, you want to see that show? We have to sit close. Because I'm proud to say in the 80s, I saw U2 at Dodger Stadium and I was so far away, watching them on TV would have been better. So I'm like, if I'm going to go to a stadium concert, I got to be one of those old people in the first 15 rows. So
I love it.
It was wonderful. It was worth it. Wore a mask the whole time in spite of the vaccination, but it was outside and it was cool. It was sort of like a coming out party in a way.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, are there any websites or anything that people should look up for you guys? Now that they probably stopped listening while I talked about a concert.
No, they stayed to hear who you went to go see.
They did. And by the way, they were so delighted. They all played like their greatest hits. Like there was none of that.
Oh, fantastic.
You know that snooty thing where a band's like, well, come on, we know you want, No, they played all the favorite songs, every song.
That's
great. It was cool.
That's great.
All right. So website, anybody?
So I am on all platforms, well, not really TikTok, but Instagram, Twitter, guess it's just those two. I'm on two platforms at Danice Cabanela. Feels
right.
like
just at DANICE CABANELA.
Yes. Thank you.
And I am on Instagram and Twitter at the Robert Santi. Yeah. I was going to say like my email address and that's not how it's supposed to go. So
Right,
at the Robert Santi.
Excellent. Santi. People should know how to spell Robert. I would.
Yes, correct. Yes. So TheRobertSanti.
Excellent. All right. And then with those two, I will now mention, as we said, Forget-Me-Nots. I don't know how long this has been, because when you record Zoom, you don't get any kind of timer. But Forget-Me-Nots is on Amazon Prime. Just go to Amazon Prime any way you can get to it and search for Discover Indie Film and go to Season 3, Episode 10 and watch this great film, followed by another great film. 2 films in that episode. But watch the whole Season 2, have fun, and give it 5 stars. And actually, if you're listening right now, whatever you're listening to this podcast on, because it's on all the podcast aggregators, give it 5 stars. Give it 5 stars on Apple, Spotify, whatever, Google Podcasts. Right? Shouldn't be kind. It doesn't cost you anything to give 5 stars to some person you never met. And if you want to learn more about the TV series and the podcast, it's discoverindiefilm.com, and it's at DIFwins on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And we talked about the Sherman Oaks Film Festival. Thank you both so much for the nice words about the festival. That's every November. In fact, we're back this November for 8 frickin' days. It's an 8-day festival. We got so many submissions, and we might show a film or two that was from the lockdown year last year. So, but we got so many great films. We went for 8 days. It's kind of nuts. I'm going to regret it, but I'm looking forward to it at the same time. So if you want to learn about that festival, go to ShermanOaksFF.com, and on social media, it's at ShermanOaksFF. And there is a sister festival in June. That's Film Invasion Los Angeles. If you want to learn about that, it's FilmInvasionLA.com. And it's at Film Invasion LA on social media. We had Daniel Marcha with us in the beginning, so I'll thank him in absentia, and then I'll thank Rob Santi and Danice Cabanela. Thank you both for bringing your film to the Sherman Oaks Film Festival and then becoming a part of the Discover Indie Film family.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.